Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 402 of the Stacey West podcast. I am Ben, and I'm joined tonight by Chris. How you doing, mate? You well?
Very well, thank you. Very well. No complaints from me, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm here. That's about as much as I'm prepared to say on that matter. But yeah, no, not too bad overall. Yeah, how have we been? You've been up to much? I think it's been a couple of weeks since I think we've been on, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. Well, we've had a bank holiday, so myself and my friend Joe, who I sit with at football and also work with, he's also my golfing buddy, and we've made a bit of a habit over the summer of a 5 p.m. tee off after work on a Friday. It's been a very good idea. I'm not the best golfer, but I do enjoy it. Joe's much better than I am, and we decided to go this Friday, bank holiday Friday, beautiful, and I played brilliantly, almost the best score I've ever had, and I was delighted. It doesn't happen very often to leave the golf course and actually have enjoyed it. So we thought, let's strike while it's hot. Nights are pulling in, not going to have many opportunities to do this. Let's go again on Sunday. And I was abysmal. It's the worst round I've had all summer. It's like I never swum a golf club before in my life. And now I hate it. Stupid game. But I don't know how you can get two polar opposite performances from one into the next, just a couple of days apart. It was very annoying. And I really hope that isn't some sort of metaphor to Lincoln City for this week. Hopefully we're going to get two good performances, of course, back to back.
Hopefully.
But that was my bank holiday, yes. How was yours?
Mine was kind of lazy, actually. Don't we did too much on didn't do too much on Friday. We watched the game on Saturday. Sunday we went up to the cathedral. Went up to watch to go and look at the exhibition that finished on Sunday. So yeah, that was really nice. The heritage exhibition. It was really nice setting. It's obviously in the chapel house there. Loads of canvas prints and nice little bits around Lincoln City hung up on the wall, which was lovely. Bumped into a fan of the podcast on the way home rather. That was rather bizarre. It was a very strange circumstance as well, because obviously as we were parking up, we completely forgot that it was the Steampunk Festival over the weekend, and that's where it all happened. So yeah, we managed to find a parking space. We got walking around, and then got chatting to a fan of the podcast who was just saying that obviously the scenario that we're in makes a change from talking about Lincoln City, because we were surrounded by all kinds of people in weird and wonderful outfits with bits of metal hanging off them and goggles and all the rest of it. And yeah, it's safe to say I don't fully get the subculture of steampunk, but that's fine. People were having a good time and liking it.
Absolutely. I don't think I get it. I don't know if you can get it, but I like it. It's one of those things I like to enjoy, but I don't think I could partake in. But apparently it's the biggest in the country or in Europe or something, because someone, one of my clients at work was chatting about it, and they were taking part. And I was quite gobsmacked that was happening in little old Lincoln. So It's quite cool, isn't it?
Yeah, it was massive. I mean, it was over the whole weekend. Obviously, we were there on Sunday. Just the whole of like the Bailgate was just flooded with people. It was it was quite a sight, to be honest. So yeah, and then obviously came home. Didn't do a huge amount with Monday either, to be honest. So yeah, it was a very lazy one, but a very needed lazy one, shall we say? So cool. Right, should we talk about some football?
Let's do that. We've got plenty to speak about today, haven't we?
Yeah, so normally when we're on, we kind of have to go, right, what are we going to talk about? Because there's not too much news, and we've only got one game. But today we've got all of the news, because we've got an incoming, an outgoing, and we've also got two matches to talk about. So yeah, and obviously the surroundings, based sort of come away from those matches. So yeah, first bit of news, which kind of came away from the Burton pre-match press conference, is that unfortunately we're going to be without Jack Boylan for around 3 months. Obviously the more you look back at it, the more it's a bit of a horror challenge, isn't it? Probably you kind of maybe swayed by the outcome of that. knowing what's happened in the aftermath. But the challenge itself wasn't great away at Harrogate. Moylan's out for 3 months, and he's damaged the other ankle. So he's had surgery on that, and he will be apparently he's back in the building on crutches, and he's kind of sticking around with a few with the lads and keeping his spirits up, which is like what you like to see. But obviously it's difficult for him being out now for an extended spell, isn't it?
It is difficult. It did look nasty at the time, you're right, and I think we all hoped the best, hoped it wasn't going to be too long, but it did look nasty at the time. And I quite liked how Michael Skubala spoke about Jack, really praised his character of last time. Of course, said it's really bad news, etc. But fully backs Jack to come back quickly, to come back stronger. Said his attitude was superb last time. So he has no doubt that it'll be the same this time round. So obviously a real shame. He had a good preseason. He looked really lively in the first few games. I thought he was going to be a real key play for us this season. And he still can be in the second part of the season. But of course, we are going to be without him for the best part of the rest of this calendar year, sadly.
Yeah, it's gutting, really, isn't it? He can't seem to catch, pardon the expression, but he can't seem to catch a break. It's just difficult. Like, obviously missed a chunk of last season with an injury, and then through no fault of his own, really, gets clattered and has another one this season. Obviously, best wishes to Jack to come back and smash it when he does. I'm sure he will. But yeah, I just feel for the lad really at this point. And it's just really sad because I think we know how threadbare the squad is essentially at this stage. And this was probably one where we thought we could do with him playing in that number 10 role, despite the fact that now we probably have a few that could be clamouring for that spot. And we'll obviously talk about that a little bit later on when we discuss the Burton game. So that's Jack Moylan. The next bit of news, I think, honestly, this took us all by surprise a little bit, didn't it? The news that Ethan Hamilton has completed a permanent move to Dundee FC for an undisclosed fee. Obviously, I think he probably had one. I think, if I'm right in saying he had this season left on his deal. Potentially with an option, we're not sure on that. I mean, it wouldn't have been uncommon if there was an option on there. But yeah, Hamilton moving on to Dundee, 82 appearances for him, and obviously he had a spell out with quite a severe injury at one point as well. I don't really know how to feel about this one. I obviously feel a bit gutted because I like Ethan Hamilton. I think he's got a lot about him. He's very. I've had the pleasure of meeting him a couple of times. He's genuinely like a really personable. Oh, you all right there?
I had a technical difficulty there.
Okay.
I think I'd actually frozen.
Okay, but yeah, he's a personable lad, and he's a really nice guy to have in the building by all accounts. I would probably question if he'd got back up to the standard that we knew he was capable of prior to his injury. Obviously, that kind of an injury can put somebody out for quite a while. But yeah, this was one that took us by surprise a bit, Chris.
It did, yeah. Just in regards to his contract, I've looked into this. Of course, we don't have the actual details of his contract, but there was no mention of an extension or an option at the point that he signed. So I think he probably was out of contract at the end of this season. So if we were to sell him for a profit, this summer was the only real opportunity for that, particularly for a player who hasn't cemented himself as a guaranteed starter. I think last season, of course, coming back from his injury, he missed a lot of the preseason, didn't he? Didn't really settle in the team. But he's a player that I think we could all rely on to give 100%. I think his work rate was really, really good, always really combative, drove the ball forward. I liked him as a squad player for us, but I did struggle to see him nailing down a starting place this season, particularly with Tom Bayliss and Conor McGrundles looking so good together in the early part of this season. So yeah, it absolutely came out of the blue because I thought once we had signed Ivan Varfolomeev, that gave us our four midfielders to play in those 2 6 roles, 2 players for each individual position on the pitch. perfect, job done. That's that part of the pitch sorted. So I was surprised to see someone in that part of the pitch then leave the club. It would only lead me to believe that we've probably got someone else lined up to come in to give us a full complement of 4 there. So I think Ethan Hamilton leaves the club with everyone's best wishes. I think he'll be a good asset for Dundee FC in the Scottish Premiership. But we paid a fee for him. Knowing how the club does its business, I would imagine that we've made a small profit, though there was no mention of that in the press conference. But I certainly would not expect us to have made a loss on this. We don't know what the fee was when we paid for him. We don't know what the fee is when it goes out. But it makes total sense for us to cash in while there is a buyer there, and while we've got a little bit of a war chest to maybe upgrade in that position. I think that's what the club is really trying to do this pre-season. Those upgrade as much as we can. It's the first opportunity we've ever really had in our history to go out and do that. So I'm quite excited to see who we bring in now. Now there's another one that's left the building, as Michael would put it. It just gives us another few days of speculation as to who might be coming in to replace.
Absolutely, and yeah, I'm in agreement. I think I think the wording of Dundee met our valuation. So obviously there was a price tag on Ethan. I would be very surprised if that was below what we paid for him at this stage. But the fact that he's gone for a fee is another positive. It's obviously a bit of a negative that we've lost another member of the squad, and it's threadbare is probably the wrong word to use when it comes to our midfield. But we're definitely getting down there in terms of numbers, and it would be one injury away, shall we say, from a bit of a catastrophe. But of course, you've got to remember you've got Dom Jeffries coming back as well, who's back on the grass now. He's by trade a central midfielder, so we would expect to see him fighting for a place as well. So I think there's going to be some pretty healthy competition coming in for those spots very shortly. So that could be a bit of an interesting one to keep your eye on. So that's Ethan. But then to take the sting out of that a little bit, we did have an incoming a little bit later on, and we have signed Oscar Thorn, 21-year-old from Colchester. Now, he comes with the blessing of a certain Mr. Cowley, who was very full of praise for him. I think he said he's 6'4" and moves at 10 meters a second, which is
yes, please.
Yeah. If you want to fit the brief that we're looking for of pace and power, it does well seem that this could potentially be that one for the future. Maybe. I mean, from the sounds of it, I think there's some Colchester fans that have said. I think I saw one comment saying. He must have the best agent in football, which I think is an incredibly harsh statement to make about a 21-year-old. But this is where I think our scouting and our the recruitment style that we're doing is not based on current performances all the time. It's based on those attributes, isn't it? It's based on how does he play, what has he got available to him, in his skill set, and will he be able to develop and become a better player? And by all accounts, it seems like this is one that fits that brief, and hopefully we can take him on and turn him into another high achieving player. I mean, he's on a 4-year deal as well, so these 4-year deals, they partly excite me, but they scare me at the same time.
They excite me more than scare me, because I think it just really protects us. I think the club have this summer more than any have really proven their ability to develop players that have got a raw skill set and to improve and mold that into a saleable asset. We've seen that with a few players that have left the club this summer, and this seems to be another one of the players in that mold. It's a really interesting signing, actually. I think there's absolutely true to say he's got some really interesting raw ability and attributes. For people that are unaware, he's a right winger by trade, and I would say very much a right winger in terms of touchline hugging right winger, which is actually a profile we don't have on that side yet. So I like this from a profile perspective. We mentioned that we really would like to see some adaptability in the squad this season. So we don't necessarily want 2 identical players in each part of the pitch. We want 2 different players in each part of the pitch that can cause opposition different problems. And I think this probably rounds out our skill set in that right-sided role. Mm-hmm. So on the left side, we've got Rico Hackett can play there, who is, of course, naturally left-footed, will hold the width on that left side, will then likely have a slightly more defensive left back behind him. But we've also got Eric Ring that can play up there, Jack Morland when he's fit, and also Frankie Okoronkwo, who you'd imagine will more likely want to drift inside. And then that means that our left back on that side will probably need to push on and hold the width on that side. We all know we're going to be looking for that player to come in between now and the end of the window. On the right-hand side, Rico's been playing there now and then, but he's, of course, going to cut inside and play more centrally. So kind of start wide and drift in to allow Tendai to be a really attacking right back and get on the outside. We've got Rob Street, who's been playing there in the league at the start of the season, who's in more of that inside forward, so has really drifted to play as that second striker in possession again, allowing Tendai to come on the outside. But what we haven't got is someone who's just going to be kind of really holding the width and playing as that more traditional right winger that's going to be a touchline hugger that maybe allows Tendai to then drift inside as that kind of marauding, roaming fullback that seems very, very popular and modern these days. So that's probably the one wide forward that we didn't really have, and Oscar absolutely fits the bill here, but he also ticks every box in regard to what do we look for in a Lincoln City player. Really, really strong numbers for his position in regard to winning duels, aerial success, tackles, albeit as a winger. But he was in the top sort of 5 and 10% for those in the whole of League Two last season for players in his position. So that obviously fits the bill for us. Our team is built upon hard work and graft and physicality, and then everything else comes after that. He also likes to run with the ball a lot. So yeah, traditional winger really. 4 assists in 26 appearances is not to be sniffed at, bearing in mind that the average length of those appearances was 40 minutes last season. So certainly one to polish, certainly one to mould, but also there's no one else like him in the squad. So I don't think he'll be one that just sits on the bench for the whole season. I think he'll be given opportunities. I think in certain matches against certain opposition, when we need that skill set, he certainly can get first team minutes. And I think he could also be a viable backup for Tendai because he has played as an attacking right back at times in his career as well.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's like you say that this feels maybe like the kind of permanent Jovan replacement in terms of positioning.
I don't know if I'd agree with that.
Maybe longer term.
I think profile are very different. I think Jovan was more that inside forward, so he would start wide but really drive in and really direct. So it's not often you'd see Jovan running towards the corner flag. He'd normally run towards the goal when he had the ball at his feet. Whereas, remember Harry Anderson, of course, as if that's a silly question, of course you remember Harry Anderson, but he always used to kind of run towards the corner flag and whip the ball in. That was his main kind of route to attack. I think it's more in that mould, but bigger and stronger and taller than directly running a goal. So I wouldn't expect to see Oscar getting many shots away or really being kind of in the box on the end of crosses, but I expect to see him supplying the crosses when he does play. Okay. But hey, what do I know?
Don't put yourself down, Chris. You're a very knowledgeable man. So yeah, no, I'm excited to see. I mean, obviously, it's another 4-year deal. It's another one where it's going to be. I don't think we're going to see the best of him straight away. That's fairly obvious. It's going to be another one where we'll need to maybe give him a little bit of time to bed in, and see what happens. But that's it in terms of the news off the pitch. I mean, obviously, like I say, he comes with a very high rating from Danny Cowley, which is. I would imagine that probably carries weight with a lot of Lincoln fans.
Absolutely. One thing I particularly liked that Mr. Cowley said in his statement
I know what you're going to
say. That when bigger and better clubs come calling, he's not going to stand in the player's way. Cheers, Dan. Love that. Bigger and better. Thank you very much.
I did see as well. There was a comment, and I think somebody posted it in the Discord. There was a comment from a Colchester forum where somebody said, if a massive club like Lincoln comes along, you can't stand in his way. I'm like, are we massive now?
No, but we are significantly more established in League One, and I suppose bigger in terms of attendances, in terms of now transfer fees we're able to pay. We are now a significantly bigger club than Colchester, which is mad because I see us on very much a level playing field as them in terms of stature and size. Obviously, having different spells in terms of league positioning, but it appears that not only Danny Cowley says that, but that appears to be the feeling amongst the fan base, which is quite nice.
I'll take it. I'll absolutely take it. But right, so that's the off the field news. We have a game to talk about. So last night we went away to Burton in the cup. We made 6 changes off the bat, just reeling them off now. Zach Geacock came in, and then basically everything forward of the midfield was kind of changed. So Zach Geacock, Ivan Vartholomiev, Eric Ring, Frankie Okoronkwo, Zayn Okoro, and Rob Street all coming in to fill out the side. I mean, no major surprises in terms of that much rotation, Chris. I think the one thing that I know Emily suddenly put a pang of anxiety through the group chat when she went, Wickens isn't even on the bench. And we went, what does this mean? Is this bad? And then it's like, no, okay. My thought process went, surely they're resting him. They've got to be resting him. Please just tell me they're resting him in that order.
Yeah, of course. To be honest, it didn't even cross my mind that it was any issue with it at all until Emily put it in the group chat.
Exactly.
Fully expected Geacock to start. Makes total sense to give Jamie Partington a chance to participate in the matchday squad as well. George was not needed. It's just the benefit of having three goalkeepers. It means that there's no risk at all attached to him. He can not put his feet up as such, but he can certainly rest ready for Saturday. Of course, and he's been brilliant so far this season. So let's not risk him when we don't need him in a game that we still certainly wanted to win. But of course, there's not as much riding on a Carabao Cup second round game as there is league games. No,
definitely not. And I think, I think we all looked at that with half an eye on Monday going, no, you all stay away from George Wickens now. You hear? I mean, look, I made some notes on the first half, and those notes consist of the following. Okoro looked decent. The ball popped.
It did.
and a clearance came off the corner flag.
Yeah, that was quite fun, actually. Those two things don't happen very often. I'm going to maybe be on my own here because I thought we played really well in the first half. I appreciate the game was not necessarily played at breakneck speed. And I appreciate Burton didn't offer a huge amount in regard to attacking intent. But I think that's kind of credit to us. It's the first time this season that we've really had to have sustained periods of possession. We had a lot more passes in this game than we have others so far. And we just didn't look threatened in the slightest. Appreciate we didn't create a huge amount of clear-cut chances ourselves. But as a first half performance, I went in thinking that was a good first half performance with a team that's massively changed and rotated. They looked like they'd played together for a while. They looked like they're on the same wavelength for the majority of it, or to maybe touch on one or two that didn't for the first part of it. But I just thought it was a really confident, competent, and well-drilled first half performance. Not the most exciting in regard to goalmouth action, but as a first half goes, I thought it was really good because this time last season we were rubbish in the cups in the early part of the season, and we struggled to beat teams that we would on paper expect to beat. But we looked the better team for the full 90 minutes. Of course, things picked up in the second half. Of course they did. But yeah, I went in at half time thinking not a lot happened, but as first half goes, that was pretty dominant, really.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. It's when you watch that first half, if you're watching that as a neutral fan, it's a tough slog.
Yeah.
It just wasn't, there wasn't a huge deal of entertaining football. The thing is, you can't, it wasn't the same, for example, as the second half at Northampton or the second half at Bolton rather, where, we're under the caution, we're not being able to create anything. They weren't hammering us with chances. We weren't necessarily creating too much. It was just, like you say, it was that, yeah, here you go, you have the ball. And we're like, but we that's what we do. We tell people to have the ball and they play football against us. But I actually thought there were points where we were playing some relatively decent football. And when we played that relatively decent football, we looked pretty dangerous. I think there was a move just towards the end of the half. I think Frankie was involved and it went out wide, cross came in. I think it was Eric Ring. Oh no, he had a shot. There was a really nice passing move, and Eric Ring came in, cutting off the left-hand side and had the shot, and it just went over. And I thought, that's what we want to see. That's what we're missing a little bit. And it felt I don't know. It didn't necessarily feel flat. It just felt like there wasn't a great deal happening.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. It was a comfortable first half performance. It was hardly exciting, and we had more successful passes in that first half than we did in the whole game against Bolton, as an example. But only half of those successful passes were in Burton's half, and only a third of their successful passes were in our half. So when both teams had possession, it was in their own halves and their own third of the pitch, which is something that Michael Skibala has been public about, saying he doesn't particularly like that. So it was nice to see us get the ball forward a bit quicker in the second half. But I think, comfortable was probably the best way of putting it in the first half. Not the sort of football I particularly enjoy watching. I don't like to see both teams just having the ball in their own third, but comfortable and not threatening at all. Burton only had 2 shots, none on target. We had 6, 1 on target. We had 11 touches in their box. They only had 2 in ours. Like we definitely shaded it and were dominant in the first half, but I don't think either team deserved to be ahead at the half.
No, definitely not. It was just, it got to half time and I was just like, right, okay, well that's a thing, I guess. No changes at half time. Came out and it immediately, it didn't feel like more of the same. It felt like there was a little bit more intent. There was a little bit more, not passion, probably the wrong word, but there was definitely a bit more impetus in the game to try and take it to Burton a little bit. And I think we did that to a point. I mean, the stats show, was it, you say six shots for us by half time. Finished the game on 16, I think it was. So, 10 shots in the second half. We started to turn the screw at the right point, I think. And this is where all the conversations around the game plan and everything else come into play. I mean, obviously, you're not going to necessarily go for the jugular against Burton straight away. You know that they're going to be a difficult side to play against. They like to slow you down. They like to get men behind the ball. And, I just thought, as the half went on, I thought, we'll probably get something from this. It's not going to go to penalties. I think we'll probably edge this. There was a good few good opportunities. I think Rob Street had a couple of chances. One with a header that went, I think it basically pinged off him and went over. There was one where he headed it down and the keeper made a decent smothering save. Let's not forget as well, Okoronkwo setting James Collins free.
Of course, that was after the subs. I think let's talk about before the subs came on first, but you're right. Yeah, of course, it was good. Yeah, second half we were much better, much more impetus. Interesting little tactical tweak at half time, which I think maybe forced the issue a little bit, because we lined up in our 4-2-3-1 in the first half with Eric Ring on the left and Frankie Okoronkwo primarily playing in the number 10. In the second half, it appeared that Frankie was playing more on that left-hand side, and Eric was out of possession in the 10, but drifting to try and support the striker at times in possession. And Riley Towler just had the ability to get forward a bit more, which is not something we'd seen a huge amount from him earlier this season. But I thought he was superb last night, by the way. Super composed in and out possession, but he also got forward a little bit more than he has done. So it just allowed us to get an extra player forward on that left side with Frankie probably starting out on the left, but maybe collecting the ball slightly more centrally at times. It just allowed us to overload the middle and get Riley forward. But ultimately, it just gave us an extra player in the front line, and we created a lot more chances. A lot more of the ball was in Burton's half. So in terms of the passes, we had fewer successful passes in the second half, but we had more successful passes in the opposition half. So we had fewer passes, but more of the game was played in the areas of the pitch that's going to be dangerous to play in. So that was more like us, more like I expected us to play. And I thought we were knocking on the door. In fairness, so Burton had a couple of opportunities. They had a couple of chances on the break. Mr. Webster, formerly of Chelsea, looked quite threatening at times.
He looked really good.
Yeah, technically really superb. I don't know if he's necessarily got the physicality to play much higher, but on the ball, really, really good. Well above this level. And but then I think the game really swung in our favour once we made 4 substitutions all at the same time. Yeah,
definitely. And just a word on Charlie Webster. I did have to like Gaz's description of him in his write-up of a young Zach De La Rocha of Rage Against the Machine fame. He was, when you see it, it's like, oh yeah, he's a bit of a ringer for him, isn't he? 70 minutes. 4 subs. So on came Freddie Draper, Conor McGrandles, Rico Hackett, and James Collins. And you think, oh, okay, are we bringing out the big guns for a bit now? 20 minutes, get them on, see what happens. Yeah, I mean, that's when the screw really started to get turned, wasn't it? There was a huge amount of attacking impetus from that stage. I think Rico was. It feels to me like Rico's playing every week like he's got a point to prove at the minute. He's really come on from some of the criticism that he got last season, and I think he's been superb for us so far whenever he's played. I think it was quite interesting to see him, because did he start out on the right again last night and kept cutting in? Yeah. So that's something that I think obviously we saw that against Bolton. I'm now not sure which side to play him on.
It's a nice problem to have, isn't it? And I think this comes back a little bit to what we were speaking about Oscar Thorn. And it's horses for courses now. So depending on the strengths and weaknesses of the opposition, he can play on the left and he can be a more touchline hugger and be responsible for getting the balls in. Maybe gives us a bit more solidity defensively with the left back playing deeper. Or he plays on the right-hand side, he cuts in, and joins the attack in the 10 role at times, and then we get an extra player forward in Derica on the overlap. Like we've got pros and cons, I suppose, to both of those. But what's great about Rico is he can do both jobs pretty equally. So for me, I think in the league, he's a pretty much guaranteed starter at the moment. And he showed why he should be that and why he was seen as the big part of the quote unquote big guns that were brought on the 65, 70 minute mark, whenever it was. Because the game really changed straight from there. And he got on the ball pretty much straight away. And he was a thorn in the Burton's kind of left side until full time, really.
Absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about two of the, I think it might be the only two, actually, the full debutants from last night. Obviously, the club record signing of Ivan Varfolomiev and Frankie Okoronkwo playing not playing off the bench. He was starting. That's the whole point. Playing on the pitch from minute one for the first time. Now, I think Ivan probably had something of a relatively quiet first half, potentially because, as we've said, Burton didn't offer too much going forward, so maybe didn't have that. He didn't have the chances to get snapping into tackles and doing all the rest of it, and doing what we are led to believe that he's very good at, because there just wasn't too much for him to mop up, I guess. But in the second half, I think he really started to grow into the game, and I thought he had a decent first outing, to be honest, with all being said.
Yeah, by the end of it, I think in the second half he got on the ball a lot more. He didn't have a kick in the first 30 minutes. The ball, the game bypassed him a little bit. And as is to be expected, he's only had a couple of days on the training pitch with the team. This isn't to be too critical. Showed undoubted quality in the second half. Really, really interestingly, saw a couple of his long passes that were first-time passes round kind of on his blind side. So that's an indication that he's got good vision and good scanning ability. So that was interesting. Kept the ball really well. 25 out of 27 passes successfully. So that's really, really good. Well over 90% pass success rate. Kept it quite simple at times, but looked really calm in possession most of the time. But yeah, honestly, in the first 30 minutes, he looked like a player that was new to the team. Wasn't quite on the same wavelength of his teammates. The pressing triggers, he wasn't kind of jumping onto the deeper midfielder of Burton at times. He then kind of found himself in no man's land, so he was never in position to intercept because he was kind of between the two players. He kind of felt a bit lost, and then because of that, wasn't necessarily in the right position to receive the ball on the turnover. But in the second half, that was nerves. That was maybe just not quite been on the same wavelength. Second half, got on the ball quite a lot. Snapped into a couple of tackles, which we all love to see. And I think he showed what he was all about in that second half, really, which I was quite impressed with. So I wasn't worried at halftime in the slightest. I just felt, he's going to need some time here. And then actually in the second half, he looked like he'd been part of the club for weeks and weeks.
Yeah, I mean, that comment about snapping his tackles, there was two in particular, which came pretty much one after the other. And they were both in our penalty area, which obviously normally, if you see a player going in for a tackle, you think, eeeh. But he timed them to absolute perfection. And yeah, came away. I was it's those moments where you watch it, you go, "Oh, he's got a bit of class about him." Like you would probably see another midfielder going in and sliding in there, maybe a bit recklessly and conceding a penalty, but he had a I say really good second half. And the other one we will talk about on the other side of a break, because I didn't realize how far we are into the podcast. We're on 35 minutes now. So we will see you on the other side of a break, unless you're watching on YouTube, where we'll say hello.
Hello, YouTube.
Hello.
Hello, YouTube. Hope you're all well. Thank you all for logging in, as usual. Lovely to see you all.
I do love it. It's all good fun. Right, let's see who we've got in. We've got the Stacey West Ultra. Steve Burton is in at 6:30 p.m. this evening, saying evening. Andy Brown not far behind him, saying evening all at 6:35. Kate's in, says, I see the usual suspects are already on. Absolutely. And also says, can't wait to draw another League One side away from home in the draw tonight. Shh. Steve Jolland says, Grimsby away. Malcolm Johnson says, Cardiff away would be good. And I am saying that because I live in the Valleys. Fair. MK Spoke says, evening. How we doing? Rich Poole, evening all. First time I've joined the live chat, but I've been listening for years. Always look forward to listening to the podcast. Thank you, Rich. Appreciate it, mate. Very much appreciate that you're here live with us tonight. And this is the bit that you don't normally hear as well. So, a bit of a bonus for you. Flossie is in, says, hey up, everyone. Up the imps. Andrew Robinson's in, says, evening, guys. Neil Flower says, evening, guys. Thanks, Ben, for the IT advice on Saturday. There you go. That is it. Get yourself in the Patreon Discord. £2 a month. Get yourself in. I think it's £2 a month. Get yourself in the Patreon. Get yourself on the Discord, and you'll get a free IT advice from me, and it will usually be good. Let's have a look. Phil Bennett says, evening, men. I thought Ethan and Frankie looked good at Burton. They seem to have settled very quickly. Sorry to see Ethan 2 leave. I think we'll miss the Roadrunner up the imps.
The fact we see call him as Ethan 2, I think goes to show the hierarchy there, doesn't it? Yeah. Just quickly on Ivan. Seems this is just a YouTube bit rather than the main pod. In the interest of balance, one thing I didn't like was midway through the first half where he had hardly touched the ball and he felt a hand on his face very, very lightly and went down screaming, holding his face. No one else claimed it. Referee ignored it. I think that's the sort of thing you learn very, very quickly. You don't get that in English football.
Yeah. I didn't see that. I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, it's his debut. I'm not going to criticise him at all. But he seemed to learn very quickly that I don't get away with that sort of thing because he got up straight away and chased back. So, in the interests of not getting carried away because it's a new and shiny thing, we've got a new toy to play with. Let's keep nice and balanced. There's lots of good, but the first 30 minutes looked a little bit challenging for him, and he did that, but then really, really grew into the game afterwards and was quite impressed by the end.
Keith says, evening, guys. Hope you're well. I'm not going to try and spell the lad's name, so I'll just call him Frankie. Thought he did really well last night. He did, and we'll talk about that when we come back from the break. Malcolm says, will Partington be going out on loan? I think that was the original plan for last season.
I would say that would be more of a second half of the season once all the cups are done. He'll have opportunity to be part of the squad, at least for the first half of the season. But we'll see.
Probably a January loan, I'd imagine. And he says too much hoofball in the first half bypassing the midfield. Second half got on the ball on the floor and looked so much better.
I'm not sure the stats would agree with you there, Andy. We normally get on very well. Hope this doesn't come across as too controversial. But we had so many more short passes in the first half than we did against most teams. The problem is they're all in our own half.
I think that's what it means. If you're playing it along the back four and then you're pumping it long, maybe.
I see. Yes. Yeah. Fair point.
Andy
I stand corrected, Andy. My bad. Love you, really.
Andy S says, hi, everyone. And Chris, Mr. Keneally, says, evening, gents. Who's going to play on Tuesday in the Pizza Trophy? Ooh.
Probably a similar score to yesterday, I'd say. Maybe one or two extra youngsters in, but probably not too dissimilar.
I think the extra youngsters bit is what Chris might be angling at with that one.
I wonder.
So, cool. Right. We will come back in 3, 2, 1. There we go. That was an advert. I don't know who for. We should really listen and find out who they are for at this stage. But we don't know. Right. So we've talked about Even and his debut. Let's talk about Frankie Okoronkwo's full debut, Chris, because it was, obviously we've seen snippets of him so far, but not really enough to get a decent picture of him. And I think, as with the whole story of the game, he grew into it last night. I think he really did. It started off, again, when you're a forward player that's maybe not got too much to do in a difficult half, or a slower half, shall we say. As the game opens up, I think he looked pretty decent. Although, as it was picked up on, some of the defensive work he was putting in was pretty solid last night as well. So, you and Gaz both chose him as your man of the match. So, tell us why.
Yeah, I was really impressed with him in both halves, but of course, most notably in the second. I'd say surprisingly good, because I think it's a sign that I wouldn't say went under the radar, but it wasn't a particular big song and dance made around his arrival. But of course, signing on loan, that's unlikely to be the case. But it appeared, because of his versatility, he can play in the 10, either side, and also up top. It made a lot of sense to bring him in, but I thought he'd be, maybe a bit of a fringe player, maybe there now and then, make some appearances off the bench, play in the trophy games. But he was great. He was of a higher quality than I expected him to be. And I certainly wouldn't mind if he found himself starting in league games, because I was just really impressed with him. On the ball, just looked really classy, really, really smart in knowing where his marker was. And 4 or 5 times in the game was able to lose his marker with a clever little turn, even a couple of times in his own third. So, on the ball, he really stood out in the first half. And then, like you say, it was also his off-the-ball work as well. And the numbers backed it up. So he won 70% of his duels, which is quite rare for forward players. Also won the ball back 5 times in addition to that. Got a tackle in there as well. And 100% dribble success, 100% accurate long balls. He got a successful cross in there as well, 1 out of 2. Created a few chances. Really good, just really, really good for a debut. And I would say he took me by surprise as to how comfortable he looked in a team. He looked like he'd been part of the team for months, really. And mentioned that Ivan maybe took a little while to get into the game, and then looked really good by the time he got brought off. But Frankie had a great full 90 minutes and looked like he'd been part of the squad for months. And I think we've got a really good asset there, a really useful player that could be part of the squad, not just in emergencies, not just as a fringe player that's only going to play 2 or 3 times like Saxon early did. This is someone who, off yesterday's showing, I think could be a really valuable member of the squad for this season.
Yeah, definitely. And I was pretty impressed with him as the game went on. Like I say, that first half, it was maybe difficult for anybody to truly impress in the position that he's playing in, because there wasn't a huge amount going on up front. But particularly when you see how he was getting back. I mean, I don't know if that's maybe flattering to deceive a little bit because of the angle. And this is something that I've mentioned before, is if you've got a camera that's looking at the left-hand side of the pitch closer, do you notice more of what the left back does? And then in the second half, when it switches, do you notice it less? But I don't know. Maybe that's just me being, sort of trying to find the positives in what was a relatively dull first half, I think. But I thought Frankie was really good. It maybe puts another option in Marco Scabala's mind for Saturday, because if he's going to be playing, looking to put a decent side out against Mansfield, does Frankie come into your conversation? And I think based on last night, it probably does. Maybe not starting for the full 90, but he's definitely there, and he's definitely got an option. So, there was that. And then, let's talk then about the next substitution and anything running up to it. Obviously, Burton had the chance, well, probably the best chance of the evening in terms of the outcome. That man again, smashing one against the bar from Charlie Webster from a free kick. Initially, I thought Gcock had made the save, when in real time I thought he tipped it over, but no, Webster just smashed it against the bar. But as the game went on, I just thought there's probably really only one outcome here, isn't there? And as we got closer and closer, even went off on 84 minutes to welcome Ben House onto the pitch, and 3 minutes later, Frankie Okoronkwo wins the ball, plays it to Freddie Draper. Draper plays it to Ben House, and Ben House scores one of the best goals that I think he's ever going to score in his career.
It was a lovely finish. You know what? When he was introducing that segment, I thought he was going to introduce us talking about the Mansfield game, and then it only just dawned on me. We spent quite a while talking about the Burton game, and we didn't even talk about the goal yet. And it was the only real highlight in some people's eyes as well. So I think the interesting thing here is who Ben came on for. You know, let's not forget we were playing 4-2-3-1 for the majority of the game, and Ben came on for Ivan. So that is a holding midfielder going off and a forward-thinking player coming on, and we were left with just McGrandles really sitting in front of the defensive line. We're really worth throwing caution to the wind from that point. And as you mentioned, Frankie wins the ball back, really good composure, solid pass into Fred, good pass into Ben, and then just a beautiful finish. Beautiful first time finish. And I thought it was game over at that point. Obviously, we didn't have quite as long to hang on as we did on Saturday at that point. But I didn't feel like we were hanging on at any point. I didn't feel like we were going to have to hang on at any point. I thought, brilliant. That's a deserved win. Took a little while to get going. As we mentioned, first half was comfortable, but maybe not the most potent. And then as the second half wore on, a little bit of toing and froing from both teams. But I thought it'd be a bit of a travesty if we didn't win that tie on the back of the overall 90 minutes. And for me, it just felt like a really deserved goal, deserved win. And I'm really pleased with Ben, because I think Ben has the opportunity to be a really key player for us this season, playing in that slightly deeper role, maybe number 10, particularly in Jack Moylan's absence. So it's nice for him to have a few minutes in his legs on Saturday, and then to come on and also probably be seen as one of the bigger hitters again. That you mentioned, the kind of cavalry came on, didn't they, on a few minutes beforehand, and he's kind of part of that a few minutes later. Yeah, just a good goal, great finish, one that we'll enjoy reliving, I think. It's just camera angle helps as well, doesn't it? As you mentioned earlier, that camera angle, it's a perfect angle to see the bend.
You just get the bend as it goes in, don't you? It was just, it was a lovely finish. Really, really lovely goal. In fact, that was the word that I think was used most in the space of about 30 seconds in our group chat.
Yes, it was.
Because when it went in, I just posted lovely, 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 and then Chris replied with lovely. I was like, lovely? ? Lovely.
Yes, it was that was very enjoyable little. It's one of those little conversations where the same word is spoken over and over again, and it's all spoken via text. Yet you know exactly what tone each of those words is spoken in. We're completely on the same wavelength, and it was very fun for a couple of minutes.
Genuinely brilliant goal from Ben House. And then, as you say, we kind of saw the game out. There was another chance for Ben House. Obviously, the keeper was getting a nosebleed somewhere, kind of coming really far out of his box. And I think from the replay, I think Ben was trying to hit it first time, and I think he just miscued it, and then managed to win it back with a header, and then tried to hit it again, and a little bit of a scramble, but the keeper managed to get back for it. So I don't think 2-0 necessarily would have flattered us, but I think 1-0 was a fair scoreline overall. So there we go. That was the Burton game. I did have to chuckle at Ben House's post-match interview. Because he was saying, obviously, Ivan is trying to learn English with Duolingo, and the thing that I find even more amusing is the fact that Ben House is trying to learn Ukrainian.
I love that. I really like it.
Yeah, I really like it. I've just got visions of everybody in the changing room with a Duolingo app, and it's like, right, Eric Ring's trying to learn English, get his English better, and also, potentially trying to learn Ukrainian as well. Is everybody else trying to learn English and Ukrainian and Swedish? Like, how's it all working? How's the Duolingo set up in the changing room?
I like that. That reminds me, heartbreaking moment a few weeks ago, Ben. I lost my streak on Duolingo.
Oh no!
Yeah, I had over 600 days, and then
What language are you trying to learn?
Deutsch.
Okay.
I like German football. I like to visit Germany, so I like to be able to speak the lingo when I go. It worked last time. I'm hardly fluent, but was able to hold a conversation. And when I did speak in English, much to Gary's amusement, of course, I spoke English in a German accent accidentally.
Of course.
But yeah, gutted. Not because like it wasn't working or anything. I was enjoying doing it. I can't remember the reason why, but it was absolutely gutting, heartbreaking to lose that streak. It really was. Back to 0 again. And I've got out of the habit now. I can't keep it up. It's annoying.
Yeah, that's it. When you lose something like that, it's like, there's no point. It's going to take me 2 years to get back to that stage, isn't it? It's like, what's the point?
Absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah, Rach is currently trying to learn a bit of Greek ahead of our holiday that's
Very
coming up
good.
shortly. So yeah, I'm trying to tell her, look, don't go mad. But then like some of the stuff that comes up is just really weird, like strings of words together. I'm like, how are you? When are you ever going to ask that? Like, why is the red hat in the swimming pool? Like, who the hell cares? What?
Yeah. Some of the statements are not the most useful for holiday vocab, but hey.
No. So
all
anyway.
fun.
Right, so that was Burton. Obviously, the draw is tonight, following the arguably the plum tie of the round, with the Cards taking on Manchester United. That kicks off in 10 minutes as we record, so we'll probably catch that a little bit later, at least for some of it. Is it dirty to say good luck to him?
Yes.
Okay, right. Well, I suppose I can't really say good luck to either team. Because
Exactly.
if I say good luck to Grimsby, then I'm going to be, well, Gary wore a Grimsby shirt, so I'm all right with that one. If I say good luck to Man United, then we all know what's going to happen with that one. So, yeah, obviously,
Can they both lose?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Which is a shame.
Wish they could.
We can't even have a draw.
I know. Ugh.
Oh well. But anyway, right. So the game, I think that the draw is after the game, so we'll find out a little bit later on tonight who we're going to get. We've not got the excitement of a live cup draw like we had the other week when Emily and myself were on here, but we do have the excitement of a home game, Chris. We're back at the bank. Mansfield are visiting. They've had a pretty decent start, not quite as decent as ours. But of course, the most important thing about Saturday, and I need to get this out there to everybody, the absolute most important thing about Saturday is that Curry Jacks are back in the fan zone, which is just the best of news. But let's talk about Mansfield, because, yeah, like I say, they've had a pretty decent start. They've scored quite a lot. I think looking through the results, we've got a 2-0 against Chesterfield in the first round of the EFL Cup. Which got them to where they are tonight. And they've obviously put 2 past Mansfield, 2 past Blackpool, and 4 past Leyton Orient on Saturday. Obviously, Orient were down to 10 men. But prior to that, they had 2 back-to-back, or they had a back-to-back defeats against Burton and Doncaster. So did something necessarily change in how they were approaching things? And what can you tell us, Chris, about Mansfield? You were nodding, so I'm guessing you're going to.
There's a few bits here, yeah. Pretty difficult team to predict this. They're making me look quite silly because I predicted Mansfield to struggle this season. I thought they'd be in a relegation battle, primarily off the back of last season's form, and particularly in the second half of last season. They had a spell of only 2 wins in 24 games towards the end of last season, and that's obviously terrible form. And I struggled to see a huge change away from that because momentum's big, but they've got pretty much got a whole new team. Made a lot of signings this summer. A lot of older players have gone out. A lot of younger than they were coming in, certainly with a slightly more athletic profile. So I would say both of our victories last season against Mansfield were won because of their defensive errors in terms of playing out. Obviously, from our perspective, good pressing. And also, we were just so much more athletic and physically dominant than they were, particularly later in the game. They have certainly improved in both of those facets this season. So they don't play out as often and as, I suppose, it almost felt like they were always going to do that no matter what. As I mentioned, it sometimes naive football or sometimes idealistic football to do that. We criticised Peterborough for that, criticised maybe Reading and Plymouth doing that this season so far. And they certainly mix it up a lot more now in terms of playing out. They seem to play the game in the opposition half. So the majority of their successful passes are in the opposition half, just like ours are. And they've just got a lot more athleticism around their squad than they had last season. Now, I still feel that we're probably superior to most League One teams in that regard. But I would say the gulf is not quite as big in that particular metric as it was last season. So they're not going to make it as easy for us, I don't think, as they maybe did at home last season. So there's a few other bits and bobs, but yeah, is that kind of what you were expecting as well, or any other things from you before we touch on more tactical stuff?
Well, Yeah, I mean, obviously, the first thing, like you say, is that you notice that Mansfield made a lot of signings over the summer. I mean, just looking down the squad list, it doesn't look like a particularly young squad. There's a lot of like 28, 29. There's a few starting with, the three there. Dom Dwyer's at 35 as a forward. He's not been playing as much. I think he's made one start, two off the bench. Stephen McLaughlin, 35, is a left-sided defender. Which, side note, it was interesting to hear Jez on comms at the Bolton game saying, "Yes, I know we need a defender. It's been keeping me up at night. I know we need a left back. I've not been able to sleep." So okay, cool, right, it's fine.
Loved Jez on Imps Plus on Saturday. Absolutely loved it. It was so insightful, and it adds so much context, doesn't it? And I appreciate it's probably not something that can happen every single week, but it was great to have him on there as a little side note. Just in regard to their signings, I suppose you're right in regard to their squad, but it's relative, isn't it? So compared to last season, so players that have left the club this season for Mansfield, Scott Flinders, 39, Stephen Quinn, 39, Lucas Akins, 36, Lee Gregory, 36, Aidan Flint, 36, Tom Nichols, 31.
Yeah.
So that's they were players. A lot of those players played a lot of football for them last season. So relatively speaking, they've got a lot more.
It has brought
legs.
It's brought the average age down a little bit. Yeah,
hugely.
Yeah,
and tactically they've changed a little bit as well.
Yeah, so let's talk about that then. So seemingly lining up in the formation du jour in League One this season, which is the 4-2-3-1. At least from what we've seen of them so far, is there anything different to how we're approaching games to how Mansfield are, Chris?
A bit. Well, they've changed this season. So they've started out in a 3-5-2 and they've transitioned to a 4-2-3-1 in the last couple of games. They lost the first two. They won 2-1 away at Exeter, starting the game playing 3-5-2. Probably a little bit lucky to get the win in that game. But in the last two games, both been at home, I may add. 2-0 win against Blackpool and a quite eye-catching 4-1 victory against Orient. Played in a 4-2-3-1. Now, their shape does morph a little bit into back three and back four at times, but particularly on their right side is where the change happened tactically. I think in the last couple of games, just in terms of personnel, a lot more attacking there. Did notice that Jordan Bowery, now we had this conversation last season, wears a number 9 shirt, was signed as a striker a few seasons ago, was always a striker in his earlier days, had transitioned initially to a right wing back, then to a right back in a 4, now playing at centre back. So he'll be in goal next season probably. Still wearing number 9, which is, I'm sorry, I just cannot agree with a centre back playing number 9. That is sacrilege in my opinion. So I hope he has a terrible game because it's just not allowed to do that. But some other stuff, I think that the matches up quite nicely. You mentioned they've scored a lot of goals, which they have. They've scored 10 goals so far this season off an XG of 7.3. So they have overachieved that, but 7.3 after 5 games is still pretty good. It's, I think, 4th or 5th highest in the league. They've scored the joint most set pieces so far this season with 4, which is interesting. But they're very reliant on crosses for their chance creation. So a lot of balls in the box. There's not many teams in League One in the early part of the season that throw the ball in the box as often as Mansfield do. So I get the feeling that, lots more athleticism in their team, get the ball wide a lot more than they did last season. But we're pretty good at defending our box, aren't we? I back us to defend. If it is quite a one-dimensional attack, in that regard, I think we should be okay in regards to keeping them out, despite their impressive attacking numbers so far this season. It'll be difficult for us to press as often as we have in the other home games, simply because Mansfield are a little bit more pragmatic in their playing out as compared to last season. I think what's interesting is that they've only actually conceded 2 goals in they've only scored 2 goals in the first 30 minutes of the game so far this season, albeit from quite a small sample size of just 5 matches. We scored the most in the league in the first 30 minutes and 4 so far, which is quite interesting. But they appear to be very strong after half time, scoring 4 goals in the 15-minute spell from 45 to 60. So that's something to be aware of, particularly if we're a goal up at half time. I think we need to be really, really on it when the second half kicks off. Just bear that in mind. But I think if we're expecting Mansfield to be the same Mansfield that we beat convincingly twice last season, we're going to be in for a little bit of a shock. They are better than they were last season, surprisingly so for me, even much better than I thought they was going to be. But it's going to be a different style of game, different type of game. but I still feel like it's a game that we are more than capable of winning. I suppose off the back of our recent form, a point would be a decent result, but I back us at home. I really back us at home, and I think we're good. I think we're a really competitive team. And even though Mansfield have improved on their athleticism, I think our athleticism and our work rate and our robustness and aggressiveness is like top 2 standard in League One this season. And don't get me wrong, I don't think we've got the technical ability of the other teams that are going to be vying for those top 2 positions. But I don't think there's going to be many teams in League One this season that are more physically prepared than we are. So despite Mansfield's improvement in that regard, I still think we can dominate in that regard. So be interesting, be really interesting. But I think we've got enough tools in the toolbox to come out of this with 3 points. But it might be a bit closer than it was last season.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, last season's results were pretty bloody spectacular. To quote Simon Pegg and Shaun of the Dead. But I think it's going to be. It will be a closer game. I mean, there looks like there's maybe a couple of danger men in there. I know Hendry scored a couple at the weekend, and it seems like that a lot of the games that they've had so far, it's kind of been somebody scored, and then they've scored again. So if somebody scores, we've got to stop them scoring the second. That seems to be fairly obvious. But yeah, I'm intrigued to see what happens because we have looked a little bit like a different side at home to the away games. Obviously, we had a bit of a discussion in the Discord around some of the stats and some of the numbers that have come out of the games that we've had so far. And obviously, there's the chart, isn't there, where it's got busy defense and busy attack, and where do you fit on the graph? And we were basically at the furthest that we could be in terms of a busy defense compared to a busy attack. So it's like, right, okay, well, we've obviously not done too much, but we must be doing something well because we've got 10 points from 15. No, 10 points from 12, sorry.
Can I add a bit of context to that? Because that's a really interesting discussion. And I've done some digging to this because you look at the numbers, and if you're a bit of a stato like I am, and you look at the numbers, and if I was on the outside looking in, you would kind of say, well, low possession, conceding a high amount of chances, albeit not many clear-cut ones. Like, you imagine that the results would start to even out as the season goes on because we're overachieving a little bit now. But there's one massive piece of context which is often missed off when you look at the game over a full 90 minutes, is that we scored the first goal in every game other than the game against Wimbledon so far. And we scored early in a lot of those games. So what that forces is it changed the whole narrative of the game. And it forces the opposition to come out. Now, of course, against Northampton, against Bolton, those 2 second half performances really skew those numbers early season as well. And of course, would we have liked to have more control with the ball in those games? Of course we would. But the second half doesn't happen like that if it's 0-0 at that point. Yeah. So I actually looked at all the numbers up until the point that we scored our first goal, and actually passes in the opposition half really high, chances really high compared to the opposition. So game state. If you're
talking,
that.
But if you're talking about the numbers up until the point we scored our first goal, those numbers from Bolton must look amazing. Because we had 100% possession with with all of the passes being accurate.
In regard to Bolton, I did it in the first half, and we were really positive in the first half. It massively skewed in the second, but again, successful passes in our position half, touched in the box, win the ball high in the final third, like all the stuff that paints a picture. On their own, none of those numbers saying a lot, but when you combine them all together, it paints a picture. So up until the point that we're ahead, or generally up until half time, we've been really good in every game that we've gone ahead in, which is all but the Wimbledon game. So interested to see how they develop as the season goes on, because we can't score in the first 15 minutes every single match. So it'd be interesting to see what happens.
I think the other thing as well, and you mentioned it there, is obviously the fact that you've got the stats. The board basically says, right, here you go. Lincoln have had a really busy defense and not that busy in attack. It's 5 games, and like you say, if you have a difficult game, or we have a game where we score early and then it's backs to the wall, that skews that by 20%. If you have 2 games like that, all of a sudden 40% of your games being taken from a point of view where, hang on, everything's shifted because we've been defending. That's how
totally agree. Yeah, it's a small sample size, and hey, I hope this doesn't come across as defensive, because I think for any metric you can go, but what you've said there is absolutely right. So the combination of us going ahead regularly, and also the fact that 40% of the games have been backed against the wall for 45 minutes in both of those games, going to massively skew the results. But there is a caveat to that, and that is that would we liked it to have been less heart attack inducing in the second half in those two games and have a bit more control and restricted the opposition more? Yes, of course it would. So there's definitely room for improvement there. So that's what's going to be interesting for me, just to see that how do we develop that part of our game as the season progresses, and if we develop it well, then the numbers will align with that as well. You'd like to think so. One to keep an eye on, but I think none of us can complain with the points haul and also the performances either for the majority of the games in the league so far this season.
Absolutely. I think that the argument that I can see coming based on those, those tables that have been doing the rounds so far, and I can see it coming a mile off, is when we were under Mark Kennedy, we consistently said in there, the numbers say that we're outperforming. The numbers say that this can't last. The numbers say
I was the first person to bring that up, not the first, but on here I brought it up as a real negative at the time. I would hate to be a hypocrite in that regard, but I think when we also combine that with watching the games, we're a lot more exciting and forward thinking, and we get the ball in the box so much more often than we did under Mark Kennedy. But 100%. You're right, those numbers, if they continue like that, you'd imagine would lead to fewer goals scored, more goals conceded. So
that's exactly the point. Is if they continue like this, and let's be honest, I think the way that we've been playing, and people talk also. You have the people that like your stats, and you have the people that like the eye test. I think somewhere in the middle is probably where, well, you're probably more towards the stat side, but I'm probably more towards the eye test side. Somewhere in the middle is a happy medium. Yep. And I think if you look at the stats that are currently out there, and you get the eye test, and you go, oh, okay, we have been playing well. Like we played really well 45 minutes against Bolton, and then we got battered until we conceded an own goal. Like that's a fair assessment of the game. And if you take those stats and put them in a bubble and say, oh yeah, well here you go, here's your proof that we're crap. It's like, well, we're not. It's 5 games. It's a small sample size, like you say. I think we'll be all right. I'm intrigued to see what happens on Saturday. I'm hoping that the home form can continue, because I think we have looked really, really good at home so far this season. If you take the last 15 minutes maybe out of the Plymouth game, which maybe gave us all a slight heart attack, but we shall undoubtedly see what happens on Saturday down at the Bank. Is there anything else, Chris, that you need to talk about?
No, because I've spoken too much already.
Well, you're nothing if you're not honest. So there we go. I don't think we have anything else to plug at the minute. Obviously, we will watch the draw a little bit later on tonight. But that was episode number 402 of the Stacey West podcast. We've spoken about Burton. We've spoken about Mansfield. We've spoken about Ethan Hamilton. And we have spoken about young Mr. Thorn, who has come in to the club as a winger. And we've also spoken about Jack Moylan, who's hurt himself.
Or got hurt by somebody else.
Got hurt. Yeah, hurt himself is probably harsh. Yeah, he got hurt, didn't he? But that is going to be it for the podcast. We shall see you again. Oh, that's a point. Are we doing Sunday or are we doing Monday?
Oh, yeah. I think we're doing something on Monday, but that's still yet to be fully ironed out, isn't it?
So
I imagine we'll do that instead of Sunday, because it's, of course, transfer deadline day on Monday.
I was on autopilot then. I was like, yeah, we'll see you Sunday. It's like, oh, we might not, because we are definitely doing something on Monday for transfer deadline day. Obviously, the problem is the transfer window shuts at 7 p.m. So we're not going to have the rolling up to the minute news all the way through till 11, but we will have something for everybody at 7 o'clock, and it will go past the deadline as Chris tries to not knock something over on his desk and try and get away from that. So yeah, get yourselves on YouTube on doing it myself now. Get yourselves on YouTube on Monday. We're not sure what time we're going live. We're not sure what time we're going live till, but hopefully we'll have some guests and it will be fun. And we'll also be able to celebrate episode 400 properly, because we didn't do it.
Correct.
But, yes. Right. That's going to do us. Only one thing left to say. Up the imps.
Up the imps.